Hi, this is Bob Roth, Managing Partner and Co-Founder of Cypress Home Care Solutions. Since 1994, we have been providing in-home supportive care services for our older adult population right here in Phoenix, Arizona. Since 2014, we've been bringing you a show on Money Radio called Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. In case you miss our show that airs every Friday at noon, you can catch it right here on our podcast called Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. So when you get a chance, listen in and enjoy the show.
The views expressed on the following program do not necessarily reflect the views of Money Radio staff, management, or advertisers, and do not represent an offer to buy or sell any securities. Some interviews heard on this program may be sponsored by the participants. It's time for Health Futures with Cypress Home Care Solutions, Bob Roth. This is Arizona's only show dedicated to providing you with expert advice on how to live a longer, healthier, and happier life. To learn more, call 602-264-8009. That's 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Bob Roth.
Good afternoon. You're listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. I'm your host, Bob Roth, and it must be Friday, and indeed it is. We're coming at you live from the Scottsdale Air Park Money Radio Studios, 1510 AM, 105.3 FM, and the World Wide Web, moneyradio1510.com. We're also podcasting now, so you may be catching this on our podcast. If this is the first time you've tuned into our show is about how our older adult population can live a healthier, happier life. How do they do that? They do that by listening not to me, but to these incredible guests that I get here on the show. And today is no different. I've got a repeat guest. She was here almost a year ago. She was here October of last year. And she's got a really cool company that is really disrupting healthcare in a very big way, in a positive way. And I am very pleased to have here in the studio with me Jasmine Bhatti. She is with Navi Nurses. Welcome back to Health Futures.
Thank you, Bob, for having me. I'm so excited to be back here and share some updates.
Yeah, it's really great to have you here. So to set the table for our listeners, not everybody has actually heard our first episode, and especially since now we're podcasting, they may be meeting you for the first time. So can you give us a little background? You're the co-founder of this disruptive company, and I met you a couple years ago, and take us from where you were, how you started this journey, and where you were going.
Sure. So it's kind of one of those journeys that I never would have imagined, actually. I'm a registered nurse. I've been a nurse for 12 years, but it was not something that I had ever imagined originally. But when my grandmother was diagnosed with cancer, I was in college, and we were given the news that she would do best in a skilled nursing facility, and my family and I wanted to take her home to care for her instead. And that experience led me to realize that the services and care that's often provided through insurance companies is not enough. People need more care. They need more support than what insurance companies will traditionally cover for them. And I would have given anything to have support to tap into, and I didn't know what to do. And it inspired me to become a nurse. I realized that what I thought was unique to me wasn't, that lots of people, millions of people around the country actually need more support than what they have when they leave the hospital. And so I actually spent the last 8 years at Mayo Clinic, and I left my role there to form this company. And what we're doing is just allowing people to now access specialty care from nurses at their convenience in their homes, when and where is best for them. And it's just been amazing. So we have a team now of 160 nurses.
160.
160.
Wow. I should go back to the tape to see what you had. Do you remember what you had about a year ago?
You know, I don't think we had that many less.
Really?
Yeah.
You've had that kind of roster. That's really incredible.
Yeah, we had probably maybe like 100 or so this time last year, but we've definitely doubled our care in terms of the people that we're seeing and the amount of care we're providing.
Nice. And, you know, from a timing standpoint, if I recall correctly, you left Mayo at a time when the world was kind of crazy, right? It was during the pandemic or just before it?
Actually, it was just right after. So
Right after the pandemic.
right. So I actually left Mayo when it was the tail end of it. So I worked through everything, and at that point, I think I was tired, and it had been a really difficult time to be in the hospital. So it was just nice to be able
Sure.
to take that experience and say, we need something better. We need to make a difference in healthcare, and that really just kind of pushed me to start Navi Nurses.
And let's face it, as far as pushing, I have a daughter who's a nurse as well, and you guys really got pushed to the max during COVID. You guys were working crazy hours, and not only were you working crazy hours, but you saw a lot of things that people should never ever have to see, especially when people are there alone and they're near end of life and they're dying without their loved ones there. You guys, I mean, my heart's out to you and so many of those nurses that made those sacrifices to be there with those folks that were all alone. And that to me, it still rips at my heart because I know some people that, went through that experience. You probably do too, but you saw so much.
Exactly. And I think that experience, it takes a toll. We're human too, right? And so you don't forget the people you've touched and the experiences you've gone through. And I hope it's just a propellant for more colleagues in healthcare in general to really take those experiences and turn it into something wonderful and make the change that's needed and be more innovative in putting their ideas to use.
Well, and this really starts the discussion on how you found nurses to come along with you. I mean, you had this journey that you went on, and it certainly spoke to you, and it said to you, "There's more." And I would imagine the 160 followers that you have following you now felt the same way.
They do. And actually, I mean, they're the reason why I get up now every single morning. It's not uncommon for me to get a text message or note from a nurse. And they're just like, I'm so thankful for you creating this opportunity for me. 95% of our nurses still work in a hospital.
Right.
And why that's important is because I'm helping them find their joy again, love what they do. So when they go back to work in their hospitals, they're actually providing even better care because they're not as burnt out. So that's really important. And they don't work very much for us. So on the side, they're working maybe an average of 4 to 5 hours a week. But it's enough of time for them to really connect and provide the care that they went to school to be able to do, like the care that they're proud of and they love. They love connecting with people. And so I get to let them do that. And it's just magical.
Yeah, and the time we talked about, the COVID time, nurses were working into overtime, but typically in the hospital system, you work 3 12s and you're done. And you don't necessarily stack them all up at the same time because hospitals don't want to have to go into overtime and pay, direct care workers or nurses for this type of work. So I look at what you've created at Navi Nurses as an opportunity for people to do what they love and also make some additional income so that they can pay their bills and do other things that they need to do, especially if they went to nursing school and had to take out loans.
Exactly. And they don't have to do it in 12-hour increments. So they can work in 1-hour chunks, 2 or 4 hours.
It is truly, part of the evolution of our workforce, right? I mean, this is the gig economy.
Yes.
People, pick and choose the time that they want to work that fits their needs. And the best thing about Navi Nurses, and I would imagine, I've not gotten into your software, but you have intakes that come in and you are able to push that out in terms of saying, okay, here are the caregivers that are in that general area. I'm guessing this is how it happens.
Yes.
And these are the nurses that have said that they have availability to see which one could staff that case or that incoming call, correct?
Exactly. But we also get to overlay things that are really important. So, for example, if someone's had a transplant, we'll make sure that there's a nurse on their team that is familiar with transplant care because that's so specialized and we want them to have the best outcomes. And we know that the research shows that when we can pair that nurse together, that person has a better outcome. But then on the human side too, we have people that come to us for end of life care. And sometimes their requests such as, I'd like a nurse who's Catholic so they can pray with my family. It's so important because that's part of being human, right?
Right.
And we have to acknowledge and celebrate and bring those aspects of humanity into the care that we provide.
You know, it's taking that round peg and not trying to push it through a square hole. Trying to get it as round as possible so you can make that fit.
Exactly.
Got a little Steely Dan taking us out in this first segment. Jasmine Bhatti from Navi Nurses. It's so great to have you here on the show. And you know the cadence. We got 3 more segments.
All
So
right.
you, our audience, please stick around. We got a lot more to talk about what Jasmine's doing with Navi Nurses and how she is disrupting healthcare. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress Home Care Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. I'm your host, Bob Roth. We got a little who taking us into the second segment. Thank you, James. That's a great way to bring us in right before lunchtime. If you're just tuning in, I've got Jasmine Bhatti. She is the co-founder and CEO and visionary of this great company called Navi Nurses. And if you missed our first segment, go up to our website at cypresshomecare.com, click on the media button, first button down is radio show. You'll catch this one and many, many more. So Jasmine, we talked about a lot of things that, really was the impetus for you to start this. And certainly, one of the things that, for me is, especially having a daughter that is a nurse, is to have her and your army of nurses be able to get the fulfillment that they really were looking for in nursing. And I heard you say this, that they find it when they come to work with you, because they're able to, and I imagine this, and I think I recall this from our discussions a year ago, they're able to have one-on-one time with somebody, and it's not like 1-on-6 time or 1-on-4 time or 1-on-15 time. And not only are they able to help them through whatever journey they're going through, but that companionship, that connection has got to be so special.
It is. Our clients become like family to our nurses, and it's amazing the relationships we've built. Some of these people we've cared for, that even if they've passed, their family will actually still send us pictures and updates, and the connections are just so precious. It's amazing.
No, it really is. And I had the honor of going to one of your celebrations that you had at ASU, and you actually highlighted one of these families, and I think everyone in the audience was moved, because not only did the family speak, but the nurses spoke. And it wasn't just one nurse. It was a team of nurses that helped this gentleman through his journey. And that was priceless. It really was. It still resonates with me.
Oh, that's sweet. And actually, our nurses still go and bake Christmas cookies with her every year. So it's just a beautiful relationship.
And people don't really realize how important nurses are. Doctors do maybe a lot of the hard work. I wouldn't say the hard work, but the important work. But the real hard work is being done by the nurses, and the nurses are the ones that they're holding the hand of the patient, communicating with the family, keeping everyone together, if you will, at sometimes in a crisis.
Yeah. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is, so when you have a diagnosis and you're going in to have a procedure done, for example, we're so quick to take a look at the physician or the surgeon and what are their reviews, what are their ratings, what are their outcomes look like, but we don't think about how much nursing care impacts what their outcome looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why you see a lot of nurses around the country right now. They are, fighting for safe staffing, and they're doing that not for themselves, they're doing it for the patients they serve, because for every patient on like a traditional floor, every patient a nurse takes more than 4 people. Every single person has a 7% increased chance of dying within 30 days of discharge. So if you are a nurse working on a floor and you're given a assignment of 6 patients to care for, every single one of those 6 people now has a 14% chance of dying within 30 days. And this is research that's been just demonstrated over and over again by one of the leading researchers around the world, actually. So it is very significant, but we don't often think about the power of what that nursing care can mean for someone with their health outcome and how that affects their quality of life and their families too.
Right. Personally, I saw something that was, I would say, rather interesting. I mean, I share a lot of the personal journey that I've been through and my family's been through. And you may know I lost my dad last year, and he appeared here on the show, and I talk about my dad a lot. Sheldon Roth, Noodles, a.k.a. Noodles, and we miss him dearly. And I got to tell you, he was in during COVID time, and he had to have some work stints put into his heart. And, they went through the groin area. And, it was at a time when the hospitals were having staffing issues. They were clearly having staffing issues. And I sensed that the nurse that was assigned to my dad was relatively new. And he was given specific instructions to check on the wound every 10 minutes.
Right.
And if need be, apply pressure to it. It didn't go so well. And he started bleeding, and the surgeon came up, and the surgeon had some very strong words for that nurse. And I wasn't there. One of my brothers was. The surgeon's nurse was with him as well. And I had come up afterwards, and I saw something that was really special. And I saw that nurse that was with that surgeon coaching the new nurse about, what had just happened? How do we avoid this from happening again? And I mean, it is a collaboration, and it's so important for, all of us to learn. And that was a great learning moment for that individual. And I would imagine that situation, well, it wasn't so great for my dad. He ended up doing okay afterwards, but it was a great learning experience for that nurse because the other nurse was really coaching.
Yeah, and the research suggests that it takes nurses a few years before they can actually really rely on their gut and their intuition to help guide their care. And actually, they can predict changes in patients quicker than these algorithms in these electronic medical records, which is, it's a skill, and it comes with time and practice. I think for me, when I reflect on what's happening right now, there were definitely staffing crises during COVID. That was a challenge, but I don't think that that's necessarily gone away. And we're seeing now all of these nurses and physicians and the rest of our healthcare team that they are just suffering still from the effects of being so deeply worked during COVID. That, for nursing, for example, we're expected to lose, up to half of our profession within the next few years because they're just exhausted. And so what does that mean for healthcare, and what does that look like? And we've got to make a change to help prevent that from happening.
We could do a whole show on this, Jasmine.
I know.
We really could. I mean, listen, I was listening to the news yesterday in California, Kaiser Permanente. I don't know if you know this, 12,000 nurses are expected to possibly walk out. I think it's either today or early next week. And, what's going to happen to all those patients? And their complaint is that they're understaffed. And I understand they want to send a message, and I'm not here to talk politically about whether I'm pro-union or not. At the end of the day, they want to get their message across, but if they walk out, they're going to leave consumers, patients, in a world of hurt.
Yeah, well, I mean, these hospitals obviously are aware that this is going to happen ahead of time, so they bring in special staffing that will come and cover. They so-called cross the lines, and they care for these people because they can't leave them unattended.
Right.
So people will get the care, but it comes at a really high cost for hospitals and healthcare systems, and that's hard, but at the end of the day, like I said earlier, it's the nurses really trying to stand up and advocate for their patients because they know that they can't provide the care that people really need when there's not enough support around them. And so, how do we look at, how are we bringing in more nurses and training them and really reinforcing the population of our care teams so that we have, as people age, we're going to have a higher need of clinicians, and we've got to make sure that we've got enough in the pipeline coming through that can meet the needs of our aging population for sure.
No doubt. No doubt. And we know that the 80-year-old population between now and between 2040 and 2050 is going to quadruple. And 65-year-olds, we know that 70% of them are going to have 2 to 3 comorbidities, and they're going to need help. And of that 70%, I think it's 20 or 30% of them are going to need long-term care supportive care for more than 5 years.
Yeah, and that's not only hard for them, but it's really hard for the family.
Sure.
AARP shows that the average caregiver lives almost 500 miles away from the person that they're providing care to. And, families are spread out. They're not, units that are close by anymore. And there's a lot of guilt that family members feel when they can't be present and they're not there for their loved ones. And so, how do we help equip them with ways that they can feel involved and be part of decision making, but then also have peace of mind, knowing that their parents and their aging loved ones are healthy and they're actually having a good quality of life? Because that's what we want. We want people to have a good quality of life.
No doubt. And it's almost going back to the generations before us. My grandmother, she cared for her dad, she cared for her mother, she cared for her brother. I mean, that's what we did. We had that nuclear family unit, and we really need to get back to that. We also need to get more people into healthcare. And I want to use this as a platform for those that are listening right now that have children that are in high school or in college. Healthcare is a great profession. Nursing is amazing. It's a great place to start, and it can be a great platform to going on to bigger and better things. So we need more direct care workers. We need more doctors. We need more nurses. Healthcare needs you. So please, if you would, I'm making this appeal. You need to help us, right?
Yes. Thank you for that plug.
No, that's all right. That's all right. And once you do become a nurse and you need additional work or you want to supplement your income, Navi Nurses is a great place to go. How do they contact you if they want to contact you?
They can just go straight to our website. It's www.navinurses.com, and there's a page for them to go to and submit their information, and then we take it from there.
So, quick question as we conclude this first half.
Yeah.
Navi Nurses, how did we come up with that name?
It's short for a Hindu word that means someone who's kind and compassionate towards someone else. And it also represents the first ray of light after the darkness. So
Wow.
for me, it just felt so fitting. Like nursing, we're like the light during some of the darkest periods for people and always leading with compassion and empathy. So it just felt absolutely right.
And navigating.
And navigating too. Yes.
Navigating people through this journey, what we call life. And certainly it doesn't have to be so hard. It really doesn't. And having Navi Nurses beside you makes it a whole lot easier. Not just you as the patient, but the family as well.
I need Navi Nurses for my own family members, and it just makes you feel not alone anymore.
We're halftime here. Stick around. We got Navi Nurses here. We'll be right back. I hope you're enjoying the show. This is your host, Bob Roth, managing partner and co-founder of Cypress Home Care Solutions. If you have any questions about the topics that are discussed during the show, visit us online at cypresshomecare.com or give us a call at 602-264-8009. We are entering now the second half of our show, so stay tuned for more helpful information to assist you with your aging loved ones.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress Home Care Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Health Futures, taking stock in you. I'm your host, Bob Roth, and if you're just tuning in, we're in our second segment here. I've got Jasmine Bhatti here in the studio. She is the co-founder and CEO and leader of this great disruptive nursing company called Navi Nurses. If you missed our first half, go up to our website at cypresshomecare.com. Click on the media button right below its radio show. You'll catch this one and many, many more. So, as we begin the second half, one of the things that I realize more than anything in our line of work, and for our listeners, we do everything that is not clinical. We help with activities of daily living. We're helping so many be able to stay at home, and that's where they want to be. But the activities of daily living can be helping them shower, helping them bathe, reminding them to take their medications, preparing their meals, getting them to doctor's appointments. I always like to look at our people as another set of hands or feet or surrogate sons and daughters that can't be here. You gave a statistic about, the average distance of a loved one to a family member is about 500 miles, and that is really sad. When family can't be there, When friends and neighbors can't be there, professional home care agencies like ours can be there. And when you need a clinical oversight and you need some clinical expertise, that's where Navi Nurses comes into play. But one of the things that you and I both encounter is we encounter when people get discharged from both an acute or post-acute setting. And sometimes they're absolutely disasters.
Mm-hmm.
And, I would love to hear what you see and where you see some improvements maybe happening. Because in order to be successful, to care for someone in their home, we need to know exactly what the discharge orders are so we can stay in compliance. Medications, when did they follow up with their doctor? What routines do they need to have? And I want to go back to medications because they were taking a whole array of medications before they went in most of the time. And then they come out and they have additional medications. And sometimes they don't toss the old ones and they may have 2 different blood pressure medications. And next thing you know, they fall and they hit their head and they find themselves in the ER because they took 2 different blood pressure medications.
Right. And this is like a loaded conversation. You know that, right, Bob?
I do. And I know we could have a whole session on this, but truly a good discharge is really the foundation of a good outcome when somebody leaves a post-acute or an acute setting.
100%. And I think, we're collaborating with the local hospital here and just going back and looking at data with them. When people are discharged from a hospital, most of the questions that they receive happen within the first 10 hours of discharge, and of that within the first hour. So we know that that's a really critical time period for people where they need extra support. And to kind of overlay onto this, it's something I never realized as a bedside nurse. I never would have imagined that people need as much support as they do. But people who are over 65, 80% of those discharges, they actually really need home care. They need nursing support. They don't always qualify for extra nursing and medical care, and which is, it's hard for them to navigate. And this is the status quo. They just have to, they're discharged and, okay, here you go, wish you well. And we do our best to support them, but they don't always think to ask for more. They don't recognize that it is available and that maybe it's something, even if it's just a transition period for like a week or 2 weeks, to help get them back to a safe place. Sometimes that's all they need. As a nurse, getting people home from the hospital, that is the most fragile period. There are almost always medication errors. Like, of all of our clients, I'd say 99% of the time, there is an error in their medication reconciliation that is filled out. And part of that is because we don't have a good communication system for people when they go back and see their primary care provider, who is ultimately in charge of their care and their team. And so what we do as nurses, we will quickly call and make sure that primary care provider, that next appointment happens within 7 days, which is that gold standard we're trying to achieve. Mm-hmm. Getting people in quickly to make sure that there aren't any discrepancies that shouldn't be there. And having a nurse that can review those medications right away will help make sure that this person's not taking too much. And when we help be part of the discharge process, which is something we always encourage, having a second set of eyes and ears that is an expert in this to review that what happened during their stay, during the hospitalization, can be so critical. And primary care providers, even though they can potentially access their medical history, their records online, it's hard for them to flip through and find the information they need, and it's not always there for them to really make the decisions they need. And as the nurse, we can quickly hop into the hospital, get report, and then transfer that knowledge to the primary care and help them make more informed decisions based on, if they were in the ICU for 7 days and they needed all these medications, like how do we correct for that so they don't fall at home and they don't have adverse events.
And obviously consolidating a lot of the information from all the specialties, right? Because you might be dealing with a nephrologist and a urologist and a cardiologist, and everything ends in a gist, right? So you got all these gists together, and you're able to coordinate back with the primary care and say, okay, this is what's happening with this patient. What do you recommend? Now they can, as you say, can make an informed decision.
Exactly.
In the post-COVID world, I won't say post because we still have it around. It's just a little bit different. It's not quite as lethal as it once was, but in this world now, most people that are in the hospital, when they are given instructions that they need to go into a step-down unit in a rehab hospital, skilled nursing facility, they don't want to go because in their mind, that's where people died. And they want to go home. And, this is the hardest challenge that hospitals have. And you and I are friends with the same hospital administrators, and we talk to them all the time. And the fact is that so many of those that work in case management don't have any way to verify when the patient says, I have family at home, I have a neighbor at home, I have somebody that's going to take care of me. We trust them. We trust the patient that, what they've told us is actually true. And I will tell you, invariably, it's not. They just want out. They want to go home. And sometimes home is the reason why they're there.
Yeah, we see that. People, we don't make the hospital environment very fun. We strip them of their clothes and make them wear something that they're not comfortable in, and wake them up at odd hours and poke and prod them, and they don't have a comfortable bed. And so the first things are like, they want to go home, sleep in their own bed, take a shower in their shower. They just want to be where they're comfortable, and I can't blame them at all. And at the same token, we're sending them home with family that they're not trained to be caregivers. They're not trained to be nurses.
That's if there is family, but yes, you're right.
If there is family, and that is, we just assume that the family is capable and they are prepared to take care of their loved ones. And sometimes it's really scary, and it's a big ask for those loved ones to take that responsibility on. And it can put strain on the relationship, because now that person is not just a family member anymore, they're a caregiver. And those are two distinct roles.
They are definitely distinct roles, and not everybody's really prepared for that. And that's really where companies like Navi Nurses and Cypress Home Care come into play, because Cypress Home Care can be there to help with those activities of daily living. But those that need nursing supportive services, that's when you call Navi Nurses and say, hey, I need some help here. If somebody were to need you, do we need discharge orders from a doctor to be able to, get your services? I mean, with us, we don't. I mean, because we're non-medical. But with you, do you need discharge orders?
Yeah, we actually don't. So the beautiful thing about what we do is you don't need a doctor's order. You can just call and say, hey, I think I need some extra support. And you may not even be able to describe what you need, but we'll come out and figure out exactly what that recommendation is. And in the event we need to address something, we tap into your current resources. So we'll call your primary care. We'll talk to anyone who ends in an ist on the end, a gist, right? Like cardiologist, whoever it is, to talk to them about your medical history and piece things together so that we can get you on a plan, but a plan that is based on your needs and your desires. So the patient for us is always a person with goals and with ideas. This is what I want out of my life. And so how do we make you the driver of your care? And we love collaborating with Cypress because we're able to work collaboratively together and use our skill sets. Nurses just want to work to the height of their practice, but we can work with caregivers and help teach them how to provide the care that these people need when we're not there.
So important. It is the epitome of person-centered care. You hear the music. We're down 3. We got one more, so stick around. We're going to talk about Navi Nurses in the future when we come right back.
Perfect.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress Home Care Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Health Futures, taking stock in you. And if you're just tuning in, I got Jasmine Bhatti from Navi Nurses here in the studio with me. We're down 3 segments. This is our 4th segment. Go up to our website at cypresshomecare.com. Click on the media button. Radio shows right below it. You'll catch this show and many, many more. So Navi Nurses is an incredible organization. I'm looking at your webpage just so everyone knows if they need to reach Navi Nurses, it's spelled exactly like it sounds, Navi nurses.com. And the headline right here is Private Duty Nurses Building Healthcare Around You. And we ended the last segment talking about truly patient-centered care. People talk it, but you're out there practicing it, and you're actually doing it, which is really cool.
Yes, it's such a gift, really. We let our nurses, they're empowered to do what they want to their fullest scope of their practice, and they get to then translate everything that the person wants, everything that they need, and put it into action so that we can provide the care that they really deserve and they want.
I love it. And I love the fact that these nurses are still working full time for the most part. They're doing their 36 hours minimum in the hospitals. So they're keeping up with the latest and greatest in innovation and technology on their front. And you are disrupting by creating this gig economy, this platform where consumers can, on demand, get nursing. And I know ASU is just fascinated by it. You know, you and I presently are serving on the HEAL Lab. That's the Healthcare Entrepreneur Accelerator Lab that is right there at the Edson School of Innovation and Nursing. Really great things have been born out of it, including Navi Nurses.
Exactly. You know, I'm a PhD student at ASU. I like to say I'm a struggling student because building a startup and trying to finish a dissertation isn't the easiest thing to do. But that experience of being a student and being able to tap into the resources of the university to help guide everything has just been so powerful for me.
No, I know it has. Can you share with our listeners, when you were here last, we talked about the American Nurses Foundation grant that you received. And for me, that was big validation for Navi Nurses that you were onto something because they gave you a significant, 7-figure grant.
They did. And not only that, it was a $1.5 million grant to study the outcomes of what we're seeing in the transition of getting people home from the hospital. I believe that every person should have the opportunity to have a nurse take them home and get settled in. And that's what we're looking at. How do we make that happen? But, you know, we're this tiny little company here from Phoenix, Arizona, and the other recipients are Emory University, Ohio State, OHSU, Chamberlain University, just massive organizations with lots of infrastructure. And just I'm so honored that they have given this opportunity to us. And they've just been able to see the magic of what we're building and creating. And I think it's helping to solidify just the importance of what we're bringing to the table and how it can hopefully transform the nursing workforce, but also really making sure that healthcare is equitable and we're giving out really important, good, high quality care.
I love that. And just out of curiosity, did you write that grant? You have a grant writer do that?
No, I did it on my own.
That's impressive. It really is. Because these big organizations, I can almost guarantee you they employ grant writers. So that even tells me even more that you're onto something that the American Nurse Foundation saw, and they said, hey, we want to really take a look at this project, this demonstration project, to see what we can do and how we can maybe use this in the future.
Yeah, and you know, we've been collecting data so far. So we're 1 year into the process, taking people home, and people either go home with a nurse or without a nurse. And we're looking at, first of all, what are they saying about the experience? Is this different for them when they have a nurse that takes them home? We're talking to the nurses too to learn about how is this impacting them as nurses and how do they feel they're making a difference. But we're also looking at really important indicators like how likely are they to be readmitted back in the hospital within the next 30 days? And how is this affecting their outcomes? And what we're seeing is really just, you know, solidifying the fact that people do have difficulty with their medications in that very first day. They don't understand the discharge, you know, and I'm not sure how many of you have been discharged from a hospital recently, but they give you so much paperwork, and so much of it is there because it has to be there. It's a regulation that they've got to send you out with all of this stuff, but it's put in a way that it's hard for people to really take the information they need to get them through the next week. And so how do we get people home with just really clear instructions of what they need to be doing for the next day or two?
You know, I've shared this with our listeners. I was in the hospital in November 21, and after 4 days, I got my discharge orders, and I put them on the island in the kitchen, and I went to bed, and the next morning I opened it up, and I reviewed it, and I was like, oh, crap, I forgot to do this. I forgot to go get this. It is a lot for someone to digest, and it's really nice to have someone accompanying you. It's kind of like having, your own private nurse that is there to make sure that you are staying in compliance with those discharge orders.
Yeah. And sometimes it's not even about compliance. It can be something as simple as that medication that was ordered for you, you can't afford it, or your pharmacy doesn't have it. And so how do we get around those problems that you can't avoid? They're not something you own, but we still have to figure out how to get you what you need that is accessible. So I don't think people they don't intentionally not follow through. We just don't look into everything or provide them with everything that they need to give them that best opportunity.
No doubt. And you mentioned two things that do happen. They either don't have the drug that they were prescribed, or they don't have the money to pay for the drugs. And is there generic? Is there another drug that we can take? And that's something you can help them navigate through.
Yeah.
So I do want to ask you as we wind down this last segment. I typically ask, are there any other questions that we haven't asked, or is there any lasting thoughts? But we have a minute or two. What do you see as the future? Where do you see healthcare going? We have come so far since 2019, and you have come so far in just a little time with Navi Nurses. We got about a minute and a half. What do you see for the future?
I think there's a lot of excitement for what's going to happen in the future. We'll see a lot more technology coming back into play here for families and caregivers to make sure that we're providing really good care. And I think what we're going to start to see is hospitals aren't just going to be confined to these walls anymore. We're going to start seeing more care, higher level care being given in the home, but that's going to require a nursing workforce to be able to do that.
Right.
And so we've got to be thinking about what does that look like. So there's going to be changes in how we educate more of these healthcare providers coming in, and the ways that we do. I think even just thinking about using virtual reality to train clinicians, like that alone is just incredible, that they're going to be able to be prepared so much different than I was, 13 years ago when I was in school.
Right. No, and it's really interesting you say that. It's we've heard about hospital home for a long time, and I think we're almost there. I mean, look, the hospitals here in Arizona, our season's about to start up. They are going to be busting at the seams, and it is hard to find a bed, and if people want to be home.
They do.
And I know so many primary care physicians, and I know a lot of concierge docs who they don't want their patients in the hospital. They want to get them home. They want to get them nursing care. You can get everything at home. You can get diagnostic testing at home. You can get, IV therapy at home. You can get nursing care at home. You can get doctors to visit at home. There's a lot you can do at home.
You sure can, and that's where it should be. Like I remember being in the hospital myself, and one of the goals is you want to get people out quicker because you know that the longer that they're there, the more likely they're to have an infection that's not even related to why they're there in the first place.
Could be C. diff or MRSA.
Yeah, it's safer to be at home.
Exactly. Well, you hear the music. Jasmine, it's so great to see you and spend time with you. One more time, how do people reach you?
They can give us a call. A nurse will always answer, and that's 480-482-1891, or they can just go to our website, navinurses.com.
Thank you so much. Make it a great day. Have a great weekend. We're going to have you back certainly within the year. I want to hear more about what you guys are doing.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
There's no place like home. You've been listening to Bob Roth's Health Futures. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call Cypress Home Care Solutions at 602-264-8009. That's 602-264-8009. Or visit cypresshomecare.com. Be sure to join Health Futures with Bob Roth every Friday at noon, right here on Money Radio 1510 and 105.3 FM.